Welcome back to Football Daily, where today we're running down 10 transfers that were seemingly set in stone before falling apart at the very last minute. Let's go. 10. Daniel James to Leeds. In January 2019, Swansea winger Daniel James was gearing up for a move to Leeds United, who were pushing for promotion under Marcelo Bielsa. The Welsh youngster was due to transfer to the Peacocks on loan for a fee of £1.5 million, which would turn into a permanent switch worth £10 million if they made it to the Premier League that summer. But during the final hour of deadline day, with James waiting at Ellen Road for everything to be made official, the deal fell through, with Swansea demanding an increased upfront payment from Leeds at the last minute. With the situation caught on camera as part of a documentary being filmed about the club at the time, a confused James was recorded on the phone saying, "Everything is done, they just won't sign," while the ordeal drove Leeds director Victor Orta to tears. Without James, whose pace and work ethic would have been a big asset for Bielsa, they dropped out of the automatic promotion spots and ended up losing in the playoff semi-finals. Meanwhile, the Welshman lucked out. He was signed by Manchester United at the end of the season and thrust straight into the first team, clocking up nearly 3,000 minutes of action in his first campaign at Old Trafford. 9. Nabil Fekir to Liverpool. In the summer of 2018, Liverpool were looking for the final components to turn them into Premier League title challengers. Virgil van Dijk had been secured late that January, Fabinho was putting pen to paper, and Alisson would soon follow. Nabil Fekir was supposed to be part of that roster, with a £52 million deal expected to be completed before the Frenchman travelled to the World Cup with his country. Lyon's captain at the time, Fekir had been monitored by a number of Europe's elite clubs, after he clocked up 18 goals and 8 assists in the 17-18 league and season. The then 24-year-old was seen as an ideal replacement for Felipe Coutinho, and the Reds had seemingly got their man. But after completing his medical with the club, the move was swiftly called off, with Lyon announcing he'd be back with them the following season. Afterwards, the general consensus was that the move had been scuppered by worry over Fekir's knee injury, but the player later hit back against this. His former agent also cited the influence of a pseudo-representative. Whatever the true story, Fekir would eventually get his move, signing for Real Betis for €20 million the following summer. 8. Kasami to Pescara. Swiss midfielder Kasami moved from Palermo to Fulham in 2011, aged 19, but in his first 18 months at Craven Cottage, failed to make a meaningful impact. So in January 2013, he finalised a deal to move back to Serie A and join newly promoted Pescara, or so he thought. After finalising all of the paperwork needed to complete the move on deadline, his international clearance documents were ready to be sent to the Italian FA before it shut at 7 p.m. But, much to the frustration of the young player and his agent Mino Raiola, they didn't reach the authorities in time due to the Wi-Fi going down in their hotel. It was a disaster for everyone involved. Kasami would never return to Italy, instead signing for Olympiacos the following summer, before ending up at FC Sion in his native Switzerland in 2017. Pescara, meanwhile, didn't win another game for the rest of the season, picking up just 2 points from their final 16 games to go, crashing back down to Serie B. 7. Adrien Silva to Leicester. Adrien Silva could have started his professional career in the Premier League. Back in 2005, aged just 15, Jose Mourinho approached him about the possibility of joining Chelsea. Silva ended up deciding that staying at Sporting Club would be better for his development, but it eventually moved to England 12 years later, when Leicester came calling. After long and arduous negotiations, the Foxes finally agreed a £22 million deal with Sporting at the end of the 2017 summer window, and Silva completed his transfer on deadline day. However, the following evening, it transpires that all had not gone to plan, as it was confirmed the paperwork relevant to clearing the transfer had arrived at the FA 14 seconds after the deadline. Subsequently, FIFA blocked the move, meaning that Silva would have to wait until January to complete the transfer and pull on a Leicester shirt. You'd have thought they'd made an exception for 14 seconds, but the decision was upheld. And with Sporting having already got their end of the deal, the Portuguese midfielder can play any football whatsoever for well over 3 months. And it clearly affected his time in Leicester as a whole. Silva struggled to find any form and has been on loan at Monaco since January 2019. 6. Carlton Cole to West Brom. Carlton Cole may have enjoyed his best years at West Ham, making nearly 300 appearances in a 9-year stay at Upton Park, but by January 2015, he wanted out. With just months left on his contract, the English striker opted for a move to West Brom, and the Hammers were poised to receive £500,000 for the 31-year-old. Promised first-team football at the Hawthorns by Baggies manager Tony Pulis, it was understandable why Cole wanted the move, given he'd started just one Premier League game since the end of August. So when West Ham boss Sam Allardyce rang him 20 minutes before the deadline to say the deal was off, he wasn't happy. According to reports at the time, he shouted back down the phone at his boss, telling Allardyce, "You're f***ing wrecking my career." It would prove to be the beginning of the end for Cole. He would start just 4 more games that season before joining Celtic in the summer, and it wouldn't get any better. He made just 14 more appearances over the next 2 years, including spells in the US and Indonesia, eventually retiring in 2018. 5. Ross Barkley to Chelsea. Deadline day 2017 is one that most Chelsea fans, and especially our own Zach Jellab, would rather forget. Not only did they sign Danny Drinkwater for £35 million, which led to Zach drinking milkshake through a sweaty sock, but they also missed out on a number of targets, including Fernando Llorente, who went to Tottenham, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, who chose Liverpool, and Ross Barkley, who seemingly stopped his own move to Stamford Bridge right in its tracks. A deal believed to be in the region of £30 million was agreed for the English attacking mid, and according to Everton owner Farhad Moshiri, Barkley then travelled down to London for a medical, before deciding after the procedure that he'd changed his mind and didn't want the move at all. However, these claims were quickly refuted by Barkley, who tweeted that he hadn't undergone a medical with any club and instead had decided to reassess his options when he'd recovered from the hamstring injury, which was set to keep him out for 3 months. So, all in all, a storm in a teacup. Barkley ended up moving to Chelsea in January instead, before spending another spell on the sidelines. But the big losers turned out to be Everton, who ended up selling him for just £15 million, more or less half of what they would have got had the move gone through months earlier. 4. James Milner to Aston Villa. But when James Milner's plan switch to Aston Villa broke down in 2006, the player had no say in the matter at all. The Englishman, then just 20 years of age but with 103 Premier League appearances to his name already, had enjoyed a productive loan spell at Villa Park the previous season and was expected to make the move permanent that summer. Milner showed up at Villa's training ground on deadline day to complete the transfer. Having been told by his parent club Newcastle he was free to leave the day before. But excitement soon turned to rage, as it turned out the Magpies had made a U-turn on the deal after failing to reach an agreement with Middlesbrough for Mark Viduka. Villa manager Martin O'Neill was equally angry, and Milner still underwent a medical, just in case the deal could be revived. The midfielder then drove home and switched on Sky Sports News in the hope of seeing a miracle unfold, but it never did, and he had to wait another 2 years before he eventually returned to the Villains. 3. David De Gea to Real Madrid. Perhaps the most famous example on this list, David De Gea had been a target of Real Madrid's for some time before his proposed move to the Bernabeu broke down in calamitous fashion in 2015. The United stopper was set to transfer to the Spanish Giants in a deal which would have seen Keylor Navas move in the opposite direction. But with the clock ticking towards the deadline, a supposed administrative error led to the entire thing being scuppered. Some sources claimed it was down to a dodgy fax machine, with United officials asserting they'd completed all the relevant paperwork. But Madrid were incensed, having had everything wrapped up at their end half an hour before the deadline, and claimed the English club had only reached a final agreement with Navas with 7 minutes to go. Whoever or whatever was to blame, the La Liga outfit didn't receive the documentation until 2 minutes after the window shut, and the move was called off. De Gea was denied his dream return to Spain, and Navas was left in tears at the whole ordeal. Unsurprisingly though, the Red Devils were delighted with the outcome, and the Spanish stopper remains their number 1 to this very day. 2. Roberto Soriano to Napoli. Another case of paperwork not being done in time, Roberto Soriano's move to Napoli was also set to happen on deadline day in 2015. The Samp Academy product had come off a decent season, in which he was averaging 2 key passes and nearly 2 shots a game from midfield, a level of performance which saw him break into the Italian national team. Napoli, meanwhile, were looking to improve on a disappointing 5th place finish the previous campaign, and add to a squad which had Higuain, Insigne and Mertens all about to hit the peak of their powers, as well as a newly hired Maurizio Sarri in the dugout. A €13.5 million deal had been agreed, with veteran right-back Juan Camilo Zuniga being thrown in as part of the switch. But a dispute over Soriano's image rights led to the deadline being missed, and the Italian staying at Samp. One spokesperson claimed the player was holding out for a move to Milan, but this never materialised, and Soriano instead crossed the Mediterranean to Villarreal the following summer. After a killer first campaign in La Liga, he fell out of favour at the Estadio della Ceramica, and is now back in Italy with Bologna. 1. Alexis Sanchez to Manchester City. In the summer of 2017, it looked certain Alexis Sanchez would leave Arsenal, and a move to Manchester City, who had almost exclusively invested in their defence until the end of the window, made a lot of sense. Alexis was originally signed by Pep Guardiola for Barcelona in 2011, and considering the Chilean had only enjoyed 1 season of his coaching at the Camp Nou, it felt like there was unfinished business. Furthermore, he was coming off his best season ever, scoring 24 and assisting 10 in the Prem, meaning his addition would almost guarantee the league title for the citizens. They looked to have got their man. A £60 million deal was agreed in principle, with the Gunners waiting on a record £92 million purchase of Tamar Lamar to go through before letting go their talisman. Arsenal and Monaco had settled on the fee, but Lamar was unwilling to budge, with some sources claiming that he didn't want to play for a Europa League club. Sanchez's move to the Etihad subsequently collapsed, but it would be of no consequence for City, who would go on to win the Premier League with a record points tally that season. Meanwhile, Arsenal let the forward go as part of their far less valuable swap deal, with Manchester United's Henrik Mkhitaryan heading to the Emirates, and Sanchez's career is yet to recover following a torrid 18 months at Old Trafford. So guys, that was our 10 transfers that failed in dramatic fashion. Can you think of any more? Let me know in the comments below, and we could make a part 2. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out Euro Football Daily too. Bye!